Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Talk to Sven. Thank you for tuning in. Also, thank you for last week's edition with the wonderful questions and comments you had. They were really inspiring. This week, we have a very interesting topic, which is new ways of connecting. Now, I've got some wonderful guests, some experts in the field. And let me start on my right with Gernot de Klerk. He's the communications manager of Nedbank. Gernot, welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
From your side?
All good, fantastically well, even despite the circumstances, really, really well.
Good, excellent. Welcome once again. Natasha van Beleveld, she's the owner and MD of Namedia, and almost 10 years in charge.
13.
13.
I just looked so good.
Yeah, Natasha. Welcome,
Yes.
Natasha. Some words about you?
Thanks. Yes, I'm the 12, 13 years in the field and an absolute passion for communications and people and connecting. And I think that's the wireless mindset that we get through, just the vibes and the tribes we attract, and I love it.
Wonderful. Thank you, and welcome once again. Colin Stanley, he's the acting dean from the NUST Faculty of Computing and Informatics. He's a master's graduate in computer science and PhD candidate. Welcome, Colin.
Thank you.
1 or 2 words about you.
Thank you, Sven. Thank you for this initiative. I mean, it's quite an exciting opportunity. About myself, I started as a tutor at NUST. I've been there now for 14 years, so moved all the lower ranks up to associate dean, now acting dean. And we worked with communication of online learning, so we have project-based courses that I'm involved on, working with students from Peru, Indonesia, and Germany. That is going exceptionally very well, so I'll touch on that later. So thank you once again.
Great, thank you. Welcome, Colin, once again. Yeah, very interesting topic you've just talked about. I think I'm just briefly starting, and I was looking at this whole communication. You know, communication is this topic. It almost feels like a one-way situation, you know. And if you look at the biological background, and I really had to look at it and to understand this a lot more. There, you know, we've got the cerebrum within our brain. We've got the cerebellum, and we've got the brainstem. Now, the brainstem is there to connect the brains to the spinal cord. You know, it controls the breathing, you know, the blood pressure, and the likes of that. We've got the cerebellum that you know, controls the muscles, the balance that we have. But the interesting part is the cerebrum that we talk about. It's where the cerebral hemisphere is, where we've got 2 of those hemispheres in our brain, the left and the right. Within those are these lobes, you know, the frontal, the parietal, and the temporal, and the occipital. Now, within that, the frontal, you know, we control the personality, we control decision-making and reasoning. And in the temporal, where it also talks about memory, speech, and sense of smell. Now, I always find it so interesting. Now, we have to realize the communication is a result of the brain working with each other, with the lobes, the feeling, the sense, and all sorts. And then we have a device, which is sometimes I call the speaker. You know, now there could be so many pitfalls in a communication or a discussion. It's just amazing if you think, firstly, the brain is thinking something, and then it maybe doesn't think it through properly, and then it has to use the speaker to actually bring it across. Right. Now, that speaker doesn't necessarily think, right? It brings the information across to the best ability of the brain currently, or how you prepared the words. Yeah. And then you have somebody on the other side. He's got the microphone. He has to listen to the information. Now, that information needs to interpret it and then convert it, and that part of the brain will then absorb the information and so forth. And, you know, with communication, there's also this theme-based communication. You know, if you're in an audience and there's a theme, say, for example, cars, you will be listening very carefully. You hear every word that's been said. But the moment there's a topic that doesn't interest you, you won't even listen. And then, you know, that happens then often at home, you know, when your spouse says to you, I told you so. And it's obviously not something you wanted to hear, and your brain switches off automatically. And then the other thing is, as well, is the communication today is such a sensitive matter. I mean, I can say, wow, Natasha, you look beautiful. And you probably could say, thank you, Sven. Or you could say, why, didn't I look beautiful yesterday? You know? And, you know, so the communication is a very sensitive. Now we've got COVID on top. COVID is now obviously not allowing us to have to have our social distances or physical distances from each other. And that even makes it more complicated. Just to start off, Natasha, if I just hear from you, how do you see, you know, with this fairly complex topic on communication, how do you see what what impact it's going to have on that?
I think the impact has been rewarding. We're realizing that communications really has to be creative. You have to create new. And with that, you know, there was a lot of fear to start off with. I recall the first 2 weeks, I was like, you know, struggling to cope with this new real. And my body felt it afterwards. I was a little bit of a nutball for 2 days, which I'm always, but like a little extra. So I made you laugh. That's the target. We are allowed to laugh. So the creativity of that is what entices me most. You know, it's almost like we have to go back to the roots. It's like becoming philosophers again. And I love the two writers, Kyle Gibran and Paulo Coelho. And they literally address it to the core. You know, we are seeking constantly. And only by seeking will we find and will we grow. But we are our own stop streets. When we're not ready, we halt. But now everybody was forced out of that comfort zone to think about who you really are, what impact you really have, and what is your true purpose, and how will I commit as a leader to continue effecting this true purpose of mine. And then being forced to be creative, philosophical. I'd almost say I think every communicator must have that as a degree, as a background. They even do it for your engineers and multi-fields. It impacts the way that you think and you connect the fireworks so that you can speak and connect better. And, you know, finding your niche in being true to yourself and being authentic is being able, it's cross age barriers, it's cross all barriers. It makes me relevant to you now, it makes me relevant to my daughter, it makes me relevant to any culture, any age. So if you can be that true self and find it with your purpose and communicate that, then you're becoming a likable person.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's very interesting that, you know, all of a sudden there are topics that I think so important and through COVID have become really relevant, and all of a sudden everybody listens to them, you know.
Yes.
Back to basics, back to, you know, the authenticity, back to the real thing, and so very interesting. Yeah. Colin, from your side, you as acting dean.
Yes, we know communication heals, and I think it brought back for us not to be superficial communication, to be authentic communication. And, you know, and especially now when you bring in the technologies, there's a famous quote by Oscar Wilde. He said, he's relating to this new era now. And he said, give a man a mask, and then you will see the true face of that person. And what he actually trying to say is that if people, when they're behind computers, cell phone, they say things that they will not say when they see you person to person. Mm-hmm. So it brings back to now communication is very effective. I mean, we need to, I mean, you know, when olden days we just used to send someone, but now we have instant communication. And we have to still to be authentic, and we need to be still human. Yeah. I mean, that human aspect still needs to remain there. Mm. And the more we talk, the more we get ideas. I mean, through communication, we create ideas, we do a lot of things. Mm. So I think communication is a very key to success. I mean, even for us that work with computers, we know somehow these computers need to interact with people. So I think on that, it's very, very important, communication.
Your picture that I'm seeing in my mind, it's almost like, you know, at first we were communicating like this.
Yeah, yeah.
And we weren't separated, and now we're communicating like this.
Yeah.
Although we're social distancing.
Yeah, imagine
a lot more real.
Yeah, imagine the people online now. I mean, they can see our facial expressions through this communication. Mm-hmm. I mean, strange enough, in these online tools, people now want to also have that facial, interactions, which is now
And see, you
missing.
look like a human, not like a perfect corporate robot. Like, you know, we all look like we fought a tiny cat when we wake up in the morning, so own it.
So, I mean, and the other point, Sven, that when you speak about the communication and how it's being received, is the other word that communicators love is tonality. So tonality in verbal, you're able to express it, but, you know, in email you can't. You can't read a person's tonality. But I think the essence of communication is almost how the recipient of the message interprets it.
Absolutely.
And therein lies the success in terms of how well you communicate.
Exactly.
But I agree. I think, you know, with the convergence of many things on the technology front, we're able to do communications immediately to a specific audience, and it's almost a homogeneous or a homogeneous communication that goes to a homogeneous group, because every one of us, we receive the message with the same tonality, the same immediacy.
And do you feel do you experience the same, that we're actually interpreting more and it's less projecting? So with the act of interpreting, we're better understanding, we're better communicating. We're actually dissecting and analyzing the data now for real. Because that is the television we have, and that is the reality that we have. And that's how humans make yourself feel comfortable, is what we know is our power, or empowers us. So I think maybe we all just like upped our skills a little bit. Because we had to. There was no, oops, gaan aan. It was, we were kicked in the bum and said, change. And I think a lot of people took it either very hard, van kyk hoe drink hierdie Namibiërs, or some people took it really well and they're blooming. And I think that's the challenge.
I mean, the point you've mentioned just now, and you know, especially on the corporate world now, I found that you know, when you have your meeting, you know, you are all equal. There's not like the priest situation already. Where sits
the titles?
Which chair do you have? Let me sit over here. The thinking already that there. If you got your screen, you are in front of your screen. That's it. It's up to you. And I think I like really, and I think that resonates what the experience I have made myself as well. Somehow people take a lot more care in communicating. You have to make up now. All of a sudden, it feels like to bring across the same message. And that's very interesting. That one maybe positive outcome is that the communication seems to be more effective. And you don't, and you know, if you think about all the other time it takes to go to a boardroom, or even drive to someone, you can just call the meeting immediately. I mean, how was it? What's your feeling in your organization around the time efficiency?
Yeah, it certainly is. So, you know, if one then looks at how the digital world sort of interfaces with the physical environment, and you needed to have that. But I think what the technology does do is I agree with you. It's almost a leveler. You know, if a person walks into the room and he carries that aura with him, it's almost also dominating, and it can be intimidating.
Sure.
Whereas now, you know, you're in the comfort of your home and you're able to express within that comfort your viewpoint. So I agree. I think COVID-19 has certainly changed things. Well, it's not even a thought. It's a reality. It's changed it to the extent that the world that we've known pre-COVID, certainly from a communications perspective, looks markedly different to the world that we're entering and that we have entered. So, yeah, I think changes are aplenty, are afoot, but for the better, if one is honest about it.
It's like the body language that was used before was a lot more more emotional intelligence used to bring across the points. And I think that's what's often, I think that probably, Natasha, you know as well, you know, I think never, ever before like now, you know, we are required to bring a lot of emotional intelligence into play in our communication, to knowing what's relevant, you know, what people want to hear.
Absolutely.
And people want to hear now the real thing. They're probably sick and tired of...
Stop the BS and tell the truth.
Yeah.
And I think...
what change does it do in your industry?
Just before I get to my industry, I'm just thinking it's phenomenal. I think government officials must be like, oh, because we don't have this whole aura of excellence and titles and honorables and all of that. Now you have to be a person and a good human. And we're all being tested for, are you a good human or are you a sucky human? And those like the ONL group, the ongoing, consistent, good communications, honesty that you've had over the years is now like you are drawing from that reputation account during times of crisis. You've built up this trust. And I recall it was 10 years ago in your boardroom, you know, and it's intimidating to sit there as a young woman in her 20s, and it's a bunch of old men.
You mean I was one of the old ones?
You looked younger a little bit.
Okay.
Oh, shucks, now the audience is deaf. So, but you have to adapt your mindset. And I think that's what I'm seeing in my industry as well. People are more prone, sorry, you're good looking, I'm looking here the whole time.
No
People
problem.
are more prone now to adapt because we are forced to embrace that vulnerability.
Yeah.
And previously it was seen as a weakness, né? And God forbid we be weak. But now we're learning that these weaknesses I have, I will embrace the fudge out of them and own them, and that will make me relatable. So I'm seeing our clients being challenged in that regard. Have you been a good human? Have you been good to society? And now you can't BS anymore. You can't write a nice speech and say what people want to hear. You have to show them what they want to hear. You have to enact the changes that you've been promising and that you've been working on. And you have to be true to yourself first. And that's difficult, right? If you struggle sleeping at night, then it's something that's bothering you that you have to sort out. So that element I've seen. We've seen people change. Change.
But very good point. I mean, if one looks at the sort of industrial revolutions and you think we're in the, and you know it better than I do, but we're into the fourth industrial revolution, and you'd think that it's probably a matter of machines taking over our world, you know, having come on from the third industrial. But to your point, it's empathy. It's that sort of human element that sets us apart from machines, 100%, that now plays into our world. So empathy, I think, is probably the one thing that I will recall in years to come from COVID, how people rose to the occasion, and you know how believable or credible a person had come by virtue or become by virtue of the fact that they shown what computers and machines cannot show us, and that shines through. So the other point, just quickly, Sven, that I'd like to make is post-COVID, we almost see the rise of civil society, you know, and those that had become credible were the people that could respond to the challenges that COVID brought upon us quite quickly, you know, and could go straight to communities that are in dire need. And we know that, you know, we've had an impact unlike we've seen in our lifetimes. So the rise of civil society, because they're able to show the empathy and almost without an agenda can provide the care.
You know, it's like the resurrection of true giving and caring.
You
know, if your heart didn't stand still, if you didn't cry once during this lockdown for somebody else that's hungry on the side of the road, that's crying in front of your door for help, that's we're on a group for women and babies in need, and the needs, it's heartbreaking, you know. So if you haven't been stirred completely towards caring deeply and truly and honestly for others and wanting to help them, I think then Oshateka, you are broken.
That's a massive transformation from, you know, what you give out to what you actually receive. You know the showing thing and so forth, making sure, you know, not that what you said is that what did people hear? I said. You know, we spend too much time, I think, on what people say, instead of saying, what did people actually hear from what I said?
Exactly, that's a good point.
Then you wouldn't have to say, but I told you so. Colin, on your in your industry, of course, major impact. Post-COVID, I know at home my children are online and and so forth, actually enjoying it because they can. I think it's an element of freedom. People can do their homework when they want to, and so very. But the impact on your industry.
The impact on us is massive. I mean, especially from, I mean, I think we have been doing it. It's just we have escalated, I mean, this to offer our education remotely, online. And, you know, there are a lot of challenges, factors in that. Although it brings up...
Maybe you can share more how you do it, because I think the audience is...
Yes, so, I mean, we have, for example, there's a course called Advanced Software Development. So I have about 15 students on our course. And we have also partnered with other universities in Indonesia, Peru, in Germany. And we're working on a real project with clients. So they have to come up with a software application portal. And the good thing about that is that we use free tools also. So, for example, Moodle, online learning platform. And we have our visual meetings, weekly visual meetings. And also we have tools that allows them to track their progress. So they push their code on a repository, central place for storing that information. So we can see who was active for how long. And so it's working quite wonderful. So, and what came out interesting is that when we have the meetings, they want you to put on their camera on so that they can see the person that they're interacting. They want to see the gestures, which is very important when it comes to these challenges of the interaction. I mean, educators have to be more creative on the engagement. How do they interact and how do they allow students to interact? The students need to learn from each other.
Yeah.
So it brings in a lot of challenges because we have the standards to match to, and we have the theoretical knowledge, I mean, the theory on how to develop learning content. But, I mean, after all, we need to really embrace the technologies to look at new ways on how to engage, especially the social aspect that we touched on now.
And just speaking as a parent of two, you know, it's amazing to see the education industry embracing this challenge. Teachers that are 60 plus years old that were allergic of video, you know, you can sort of see them trembling at the beginning, and then it's just like, I'm teaching to grade to oneers, I have to like own this. How we have just dramatically improved the skill set of your older generation. Yeah. Sorry, I'm teasing you.
There's the sexual,
but you're an expert in a straight face.
Then we'll sort out this age story here.
Yes.
German people, luckily I get things like...
So, I mean, yes, I mean, it is quite amazing. You have also those that were very reluctant on joining the trend, I mean, the technology. But then we said, okay, try to be in your normal setup. These days, we can just have tools that record what you're doing. So you could have your lecture explaining formulas. I mean, then you record that and students get the content. And what I also like from my experience, while you are interacting with students and you hear a child crying, they say, hey, is that your son? Or is doing... So you still have those interactions of socials, and that's very important. And then later they work on their own subgroups online. So that's, for me, is quite amazing how people are taking up. I mean, but there are challenges. How do we do assessment? How do we make sure that this person sitting behind that computer is that authentic person? So there, I mean, some universities, they want to use this MS Teams, where they put, I mean, in the more normal physical setup, you need an invigilator. But now you want to remote that remotely. So you want the camera to be on the student. And students say, no, you're invading my privacy. So we had new challenges of looking in that. How do you do it? So what we have done is we moved all our courses to project-based. So to say, okay, work on projects. And even if we set up a test, they'll let it be on context case studies to understand the context more. So that's what it moved.
It's almost also a question as to how do you take that experience and that excellence and, you know, you inject it into the greater system, if I can call it that. So if one looks at it, institutions like NUST and the universities, you probably set up already for distance education. But schools have never had to do it.
So, but don't you feel, sorry?
Yeah, it's just how does one take that excellence, your learning, your expertise and raise all of our game?
Yes, that's a good point, because we started to think like, you know, what we experience, can we not now also as a community service provided to schools? I mean, just now, this morning, people were talking about how do we get the learners to schools without facilities and some to be online. you don't need everyone to have a computer, but if you can have one that project, you have a big screen and you project to another class or to the whole country, one lecture, so one teacher teaching.
Clever.
Yeah, so you could start looking at those approaches on conducting this online.
Maybe using the public open media,
Yes.
talk to Prime Media, and then stream live classes so that the
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing, and Colin and I had a bit of a pre-talk as well on this one, is the opportunities that exists post-COVID, and if the momentum, and of course if people don't feel their privacy is violated or something like that, I think it's all of us, when the first time we get on FaceTime, we remember, ooh, is it me?
Like,
and then you're saying, oh yeah, that is you, that's the way you look.
Like, deal with it.
And yes, that's the person sees the face on the other side. And once we get over that, then I think it will be huge opportunity. We talked about there are places in Eastern Europe already where they've got these centers with world-class professors, teachers, and people can then log in online, and the savings for government in terms of, from an education point of view, not to build schools, not to have to make sure, maintain even if you look simple things like distribution of books, school books, and all that money could be probably invested into an iPad or technology that they have access to. So a major opportunity.
But I want to flag, people with people flu also abuse the situation. And you're not, if in COVID and during these changes, you're not allowed to go into hobbit mode. And if you're blessed if you've got a workforce that is committed and that actually comes to you and says, let's do this and this and this and this. And I think you are now tested for the people that you chose to surround yourself with. Aren't you extremely thankful because you've got a really, 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 really good team and a range of directors. So having already established the good networks, the good relationships that you have, now you're almost better than before.
It's true.
There's just one thing to touch on this, because we communicate to people using different tools depending on the relationship. What I've picked up also is that we need to choose the tools wisely. Let's say for professional communication, if you use WhatsApp, yes, you can use it because everyone is using it, but it goes a bit into your space. I don't want to see my seniors update status.
Goodness.
So there is tools.
Crazy videos.
Yeah, so there's Slack. There's a tool called Slack, for example, which is linked to your email. It's not to your personal number. Mm-hmm. And then in that Slack work group that you created, you can create subgroups. In WhatsApp, you can't do that. You have, family groups, but let's say in a family group, you want subcommittees. You want people to look at finances. You want to look at other things. So in Slack, you can do that. So that's what we do for our students also. Okay. We are developing software applications. We have different architecture layers. Some people look only on the interface. Those students work on that group. And then the instructors can always go in all the groups and comment. And we are using those tools. And that tool is for free. So
we're awesome.
Yeah, so
I love it.
But the other thing that it raises is probably from a governance perspective.
Yes,
any institution's governance protocols, whether it keeps pace with technology, and especially if it's of a free nature, how does that infringe on cybersecurity?
Yeah, it's a very good point that you are raising there. Especially, for example, why Zoom is so popular is because they made it easy to use by unchecking some security features so that you can just quickly start up and start using it. So it will not be wise for Namibian defense to use it, or the government for the high-level security communication. But for small business, just to communicate they are not having any privacy. So they can use the tool. So we need to also be careful on the tools that we use depending on our...
Almost like a tools risk analysis.
Yes, you need to do that, yeah.
Unfortunately, I must also tell you, we have used all tools, but I think we should ask Zoom to pay something for what I'm saying now. It is just the most convenient tool at the moment. It's easy and so forth, and often the information you share, people they can listen to it.
Yeah.
Everybody, you still have to apply it. So I'm not too worried about it. Obviously, if you If you have a war situation and you have a secret about this or that,
Yeah,
and you
yes.
don't want to
Yeah.
share the information, but most information,
Yeah.
it's not that confidential as most people
Yeah.
think it is.
Just one thing, what I picked up on these visual meetings, the corporate going through the agenda is easy. What people are finding it difficult is those social interactions that we used to have, the office, coffee, meeting at the water point. So some companies are also now creating just visual coffee meetings where we just, no agenda, just sit, because it's very important to build trust and engagement. That is also really related to creativity. So people are missing that. And with the tools now, you can, let's say I can have a 3D model of myself, and then Sven can take me and say, listen, let's talk. How are you? That's now the moving to have this interaction more on the social aspects.
Cool idea. I think the four of us must have a Zoom coffee session.
Yes.
But I think that's what maybe one of the drawbacks is in terms of the current technology that we are. We have these meetings set, and I realize that I'm so much more productive. I get so much more done.
Yes.
But the touch, the secretary,
Yeah.
the moment you spend,
Sounds wrong.
The reception, the touch you spend in terms of the short, how are you doing, how's that, and so forth. A lot of that is going, or someone you don't necessarily
Just to
have.
care.
You only need to have maybe a particular business topic where you only talk about once a month, meaning that you see this person once a month, or 12 times, or 11 times a year.
Yeah.
If you start thinking about it, and that's the sad part about it.
Yes.
And there we need to see how we overcome that.
But it's a challenge to leadership, is it not?
It is.
It's a conscious decision to make sure that you remain human and you remain relevant in a person's life. I agree with that.
Yeah.
Natasha, you have got a comment that came in here from Will Bowers. Thank you very much, Will.
Hi, Will.
He made a comment: people who are in tourism shouldn't see each other only as opposition, but as oppoleagues, meaning opposition colleagues. That's where a good communication will start. What do you think about that?
Sure, our tourism industry, man, that's like seeing a hungry man on the side of the road. It hits home. So I agree. I think maybe that notion, because I had a meeting with the NWR board the other day, and it's so unhealthy, unproductive to say what is mine, and yours is yours. Everybody can have a share of the cake. So healthy competition is fine, but healthy collaboration is the future.
Yep.
Yeah.
That is absolutely 100% the future. And we see it. We analyze all Namibian print and radio and television and 80 million plus digital sources, and it has the same message. If you want to be smart, build smart partnerships and share the freaking fame. So we have to be creative, I think, for tourism. How can you do that? How can you scratch my back and I scratch yours? And how do you approach this without becoming emotional? That's what screws up most things in life, is when people start becoming emotional about stuff and not treat it like business. So we have to put on the business hat for the tourism industry and talk to each other in business. And
There's this African proverb where it says, alone we go fast, together we go far. And I always believe, often...
I made that mistake.
We often invite, various people from various companies into our leadership sessions, and the fact is that I'll be doing a lot better amongst many successful people than if I'm the only one among everybody who does fails. And I think this is where the World Common comes in.
And
here.
it's a difficult
tourism,
lesson.
and it's not even I scratch your back and maybe scratch each other's back together. No. I mean,
that should look manky.
We're in a crisis, and only now we realize. And I mean, we all know Namibia's potential as a tourist destination. I mean, we know that it employs 15%, or maybe not now anymore. But if we realize that and working a lot more together. And not as oppoleagues. It's a new word. I've never heard that before.
That's cool.
A huge opportunity for us, and it's maybe a possibility, maybe for post COVID now.
I think that's one of the lessons we've learned. That it's a common enemy almost. It's a common challenge that we're facing, but the enormity is such that you have to pool resources. I mean, we had, from a Nedbank Namibia perspective, a donation ceremony to the Red Cross, and it's probably only COVID that would create a platform where two banks share the same platform, because the challenge is just too big to try and tackle with a sniper approach. If you have one cannon shot, you have one single target. Why not amass the sort of ammunition and hit it with one go? Yeah. So I agree with what Will has said. I mean, the challenge is the same for all of us. Yeah. And our resources are finite. I mean, you've only got so much, whether it's intellectual property, whether it's funds to actually, or human resources to throw at the issue.
I mean, I just want to add on that. I mean, especially these days, we have what we call crowdsourcing. Yep. We say in your organization, you don't have all the smart people. There are smart people all over the globe. So use the platform, the internet, to get those skills. And I mean, I like what that comment, especially now relating to tourism. It's also about now enhancing technologies. Let's say, for example, someone go to a zoo. How does that person interact with the objects, the animals, and live stream to people on Facebook? And those people are also part of the zoo. And now they're engaging into that environment. So those are the new ways now that we need to collaborate and work together.
Dapper.
Yeah, so to work together, we need to be very, very creative. And I like this new world that we are moving into, because as we started at the beginning from the talk, it goes back to human. And how do we communicate in context? I mean, that's if you on my research, I'm talking about African epistemologies. I mean, it's all relating to, if you are in an African context, the owned concept, how do you relate to people? I mean, those respect, love, those are the crucial things before you build the solutions.
And there is where this comment comes here from Mariana Kalola. She just said, social interaction is still important. We are social beings after all.
Yes.
How do we do that?
Oh, the Romeo and Juliet Wi-Fi.
I think therein lies the challenge. I mean, so conventional wisdom says that we can't do it, and we have to follow, but it doesn't mean that the yearning to associate, to belong, stops. But, we look at what we're probably seeing from a social media perspective is that yearning being amplified in pictures. The one example is the collaboration that we've just recently seen on singers and that celebrate the beauty of our country. It just warms the heart. But there's a view beyond COVID, is there not, for tourism? So, how do we still celebrate, and how do we tap into the emotions of people such that we're able to experience what we're yearning for when COVID does disappear into the distant sunset?
It's a beautiful.
Natasha, how do we keep the social interaction?
Yeah, because I like a sticky drukkie, nee.
Yeah, I'm sure.
No, I'm a touchy-feely person.
Yeah.
It's my love language is caring for people and to feed people. So don't come for supper. You'll go home fat. Now, this distancing, laughing at me. This social distancing, it's a mindset change. And I think now, and I'm going to sound like a little bit like a hippie, it's almost like an aura. It's like the vibe you're giving. So I think there is love in companionship, in distance. And we are taught now to be unconventional. And that's okay, There's ego, weg. There's pride, weg. So we have to be completely naked. And again, it's unconventional, but it's okay. And everybody is journeying through this on their own way, on their own level. And they're becoming a parent or a teacher or a leader in their own way. It's like processing data, it's gigs and megs and nuts and knots. And we got a lot of it immediately. And we had to build up our own little server and our protection mechanisms and the airing and all of that. We had to build a new machine for coping with life. And we will make mistakes. I had a couple of fails. But then you have to man up, buck up, be brave, show up, each time.
Yep.
You know, we aren't always fantastic. I don't always look good. I don't always feel good. I don't always feel like people. Or, you know, you go through seasons and emotions, and we must respect that the people we lead and communicate to is in a different season. It's like the iceberg, and we see that little top, and there below is all die gemors and stront and dealing with life, daily dealing with life. And I think that's what's connecting us. We're all seeing a little bit of what's below each other's ice tip, and with respect and kindness. And I'm so thankful, you know, we think like, as ek net 'n fout maak, or that people are judging me, or people say this or that. You have learned to just feel a rat's ass and to be fine with being you. And just like a bee buzzing on your vibe, and then you get a much better tribe.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think our session is slowly coming to the end.
Yeah.
Colin, if I just can ask you in just 2 minutes, just talking about that how do you overcome the social connection or lack of social connection to the students?
Yes, we use these technologies, and we allow also that social, the tools allows now emojis to show how you are feeling. And I can see it's very slowly. I mean, we are used to the norm where you can't show that I'm fine, you know. But the tools are also incorporating these social interactions. I mean, on the social app, students are using House Party. I mean, there's a software called House Party where they can join and then just video conferencing that the other one is playing music, they can listen, they can dance. So there are those team building tools that allows that to overcome that.
Interesting.
And even of our colleagues, there is tools that allows people to remotely work on documents. There's a OneDrive, Dropbox. So, I mean, you can have your audio, and then all three or four of us can work on the same document at the real time. I mean, it has still a social aspect on it, which is very good. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Gerard, how do we do that as corporates? How do we keep the authenticity? I mean, you gave a great example just now with the sharing of platform to the two banks, but yeah, what is it that else we can do? What's the opportunity?
Yeah, I think the opportunity lies in what we're doing right now. And I think, you know, the quest would always be to remain relevant, but I think, you know, you mentioned the word authentic, and people can just feel when the approach is authentic, when it's sincere. And we need that as human beings more than ever, is the sincerity. So we've got to build in that sincerity right now, mean it, own it, live it, you know, so that post-COVID, we have that credibility factor cemented.
That's excellent to hear. Natasha, how do we do that?
What, the distancing thing in corporates?
Just to the opportunities, you know, how do we, I mean,
Well,
we
this
know
is cool.
someone concluded that
Yeah.
it's very effective communication, huge opportunities, but yet, how do we keep this being people, staying people?
Maklik man, gesels met my.
But that's exactly what we want to hear now. Let me hear
Yeah,
from
no,
the industry.
Yes. So if we're doing things differently, it's not different to me. It is what it is. So I'm not going to act differently towards any of my clients, and the meetings we have online are fabulous, and I'm slowly taking each of them on a lunch date, and that's lekker. We was running around like headless chickens. Well, I'll be the chicken, and what did they call me? Also yellow bone. So we were running around and we kind of missed each other. We sort of were communicating so much, but we didn't invest in building relationships. And now I love it. It's like when I started business, we're going back to that roots of let's go for coffee, almost like taking the girlfriend, taking your hand. Yeah. I'm giving you the first kiss. We're going on our first movie date, whatever. So you're actually relearning how to build a good actual living relationship. So I think that's what's going to change, is we're going to have better relationships or zero relationship. You're going to include more people or exclude more people, which is sort of like a filtering process, which is healthy. I think it's like a health check for the way we communicate.
Interesting. Colin, you wanted to add?
Yes, I wanted to add. I mean, it's well said for all the colleagues here.
Yeah, you're slim.
One thing that I wanted to add is, you know, because we should try to avoid physical contact. One thing that still surprises me is the signatures, where we send someone from door to door for signatures, while we can do this electronically. So, I mean, we can even PDF we have 3 signatories. We send the documents around, people sign it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then that's it. Then we avoid printing, scanning back the document into the computer.
Yeah.
So we need to change in those.
Doing something for the environment on top.
Yeah, exactly. So we really need to change how we do business these days.
Being a mother and business owner, you already knew that before COVID.
Anyway, to all viewers, I think that was a most interesting conversation we had with some incredible speakers here with me today. I certainly believe, as we know, it's a tough time, but I believe we're going to get through it. We're going to get through it in a different way. We've heard things such as that we will need to be a lot more attentive or much more focused on what we say, how we say things, and how we can add to the conversations we normally have, maybe bringing the emotions into it. And then there are huge opportunities on the education side, from Colin's side here, of allowing people access to great education. And an interesting era to look forward to on the positive side, and let's hope and make sure you keep to what we all committed to, the social and physical distancing, and hopefully soon we'll look forward to everything being open and free again. Speak to you next week.